Hello, we're going to have a look inside the Samsung 6-speed sequential this evening. Give you an idea what a sequential gearbox looks like inside and what a dog box looks like. You'll have all have heard people talking about dog boxes and sequentials. That's your Samsung 6-speed. I've taken the row of bolts off. As I said on one of the previous videos, it's pretty much a black barrel with a row of bolts around the front and a row of bolts around the back. I have the bolts out and the gear linkage and the gearbox mounting. So when you take them all out, the whole thing just slides out. Now it can be a bit of a wiggling session to get it out, as with most gearboxes. Probably this sandwich plate is like a floating sandwich plate, free floating inside this gearbox, which is fairly unique. I don't think I've seen that in any other gearbox. I don't know if it's to do with keeping the shaft centralized or just taking the weight off the shaft or whatever it is, but whatever it is, it works, but it leaves it just a bit of fiddly because it's a slide-in fit into the case and it's a bit fiddly getting it out. So get that out of the way. You can see in there, like one gear left stays in the box. That's the top drop gear, the drive drop gear, and it meshes with this lower drop gear onto the lay shaft. So that basically I can have a 1-to-1 drop gear or overdrive or underdrive. There's maybe 7 or 8 different ratios available. It's handy for when you're setting up your car and you want to go for a strong crown wheel and pinion. So you want a fairly big ratio crown wheel and pinion to take all the weight, and then you can lower the gearing with those drop gears. So it's a handy thing to do. The gearbox itself, you tip her over. You'll see this gearbox is done just under 700 kilometers from it was last checked. Mostly on gravel, so gravel I find tends to be a bit sorer on them than tarmac, probably because you're changing gear mid wheel spin all the time. But this is showing remarkably good. You have your gears, obviously. These are a bit funny, as in the first gear here, and then second gear, third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear, sixth gear, and your reverse gears tucked in there. So it's worth bearing in mind when you take this all apart, what way to go back together again. Obviously the lay shaft, if you have the gears all set out from the lay shaft, it'll guide you what way everything goes back together again. But I suppose like anything these days, take a photograph and you'll remember, it'll give you some memory of what way things go. Plenty of little shims and spacers to watch out for to make sure they go back in the same place. But generally what we're looking for in these, you always check the teeth for pitting. I've never had any issues with some Sonos pitting gears. They seem to use real material and not chocolate like some gearboxes use. No names being mentioned. So I haven't had any issues with pitting, but I always check just to make sure, just go around all the gears, just make sure there's no detonation, no pitting on them, no little pinholes or any problems coming down the line. If there's any pitting and anything, it's changed. You don't take a chance on it, because if you lose a tooth, chances are it's going to wreck most of the gears before you get stopped. Even though there's a magnet, 2 magnets in these boxes to catch anything like that there, it's always a good thing when you see there's nothing big on there. Reverse gear, the reverse gear idler sits in there. It's an Achilles heel in quite a few gearboxes, but this one seems to be well thought out, and it has a nice big flanger in it, and the gear sits in there, so it's got a real good strong pivot, so it can't be shot off to the side or bent if you do select reverse gear accidentally while you're still going forward. You shouldn't in these, because as I've showed you in a previous video, there's a cable trigger on the stick, and that pulls that cable, so it's what stops you from going into reverse gear accidentally. So you have your main shaft going through the middle, and then what I call the lay shaft at the bottom, taking all the spread for the gears up and down. So as I said, or was going to say earlier, the main thing I'm looking for is dog wear. So you have your dog gear, and basically that engages into whatever gear you select. So it's pretty much brutal, as it just bangs straight in to catch the dogs. It's not like a road gearbox from a normal traditional car where you have a synchro mesh system, which effectively is like a braking system that when you pull the gear, it slides towards it and slows the gear down so that it engages properly. These have no slowing mechanism. These are just bang, wham, bam, thank you mom, I'm going in there, and that's it. Essentially they're designed to wear. You can't have a dog box that's not going to wear at some stage. They will wear. It's just the design of the beast. Whoever's driving the car and the way the car's set up and the ignorance or whatever you might want to say, or mechanical sympathy, it'll dictate it to a fair degree. And flat shifts, properly set up flat shift will give good dog wear, because it'll let the engine cut for a second, take the load off, and get your next gear before the power comes back on again. A badly set up flat shift will just destroy a dog box. So it's very important that that's right. I don't use the clutch on the up changes, but I do use the clutch on the down changes. You don't have to worry about that from a certain degree. Tends to be even slightly slower in the gearbox if you're clutching on the way up. Just get in the next gear as quickly and smoothly as possible. Don't ask it for a gear, just tell it you're taking the next gear, and that seems to be the way to treat the dog box and make it survive a bit better. But as we're saying this first that way, and the dogs are all good, obviously a 6th on that side, and the dogs are not good, you're looking to see if there's a sharp edge on these. If they're starting to round off, then you have to think about changing them. Generally, most gearboxes, and this is the same, the dog ring, 1, 2, 3, and the 4th one's up in reverse gear, will be hardened to a slightly lesser degree. I'm not sure what way the terminology for that, but there won't be as hard a hardened process wouldn't have been to the same extreme as with gears. Idea is that this will wear out quicker than the gear, because this is a whole lot cheaper and it's a more serviceable item than a gear. So you're looking for most of your wear to be on the dog ring. If you see the gears wearing more and your dog ring's not, there's been an issue with the hardening process. And again, you will get some gearboxes kind of designed that way so that you're spending more money all the time, so it's worth watching out for. So I'm happy with that. Flick over to 2nd and 3rd. Again, happy in there. I think you can see that okay. Nice square edges and everything there, so that's good. And 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. Again, we're good and square. All's looking good in there. And then 6th and 1st. The reverse gear, you're not going to see much wear and tear in that, or you shouldn't. If you do, then you've had an ignorant driver in your car, shall we say. That's the same dog ring as the rest. So if you're in a tight spot and you need a dog gear quick, this side's never used on this gear. This one's only used for reverse, so it's usually going to be the best dog in the whole gearbox. So you could swap that around and put it, say, in 2nd and 3rd. If you wanted to, and just put the best of a bad bunch back in there to do reverse gear. So that's fairly straightforward. As regards the gear change and what way it works in these, it's fairly straightforward, to be honest. The secret's all in the big selector barrel. You can see the way it's marked in. Let me see if I can tip it over a bit better. See if you can see more there. So you have a pin coming out of each selector fork. So you have 4 selector forks, reverse having one of its own. And this journal, as you turn this shaft, pulling the gear lever turns this shaft, it takes it in and out of each gear, so it pulls it back and forth along these selector rails. So obviously that is a very precise bit of work, but it's a very simple system when you see it. These pins are always worth checking to make sure there's no wear or tear in the system, because they do a lot of work. The pins are replaceable without changing the whole selector fork, so it's not an expensive thing to do. I have changed them once or twice in the past, but it's something you'll be changing maybe once a season, so maybe after 12-15 events or something like that. So that's how simple it is. When you're turning this, it's pulling one selector fork out of a gear, pushing another selector fork into a gear, and it keeps going around as you keep rotating it. So it's not as much of a rocket science as you think. This little indentation at the end goes into the potentiometer up at the front of the gearbox down there, and that's what turns the switch to let the car display on the readout what gear you're in, and the second one is for the flat shift to engage that. So there you go. Clear as mud. They're fairly simple to take apart. If you've seen any wear or anything like that there, obviously you have to take the whole shaft apart, but once you have these 2 circlips off, you just slide everything off. You know, it's very simple, it's very straightforward, just remembering where everything goes, obviously. You have this little unit here that clicks in every time you pull a gear. It's drops and engages the next one. So it just gives you that positive feel that you're in the gear, just to hold it there for you. The dogs will hold it in to a certain degree as well, but that there gives a nice positive feel. As I said before, this is the nicest driving gearbox I've ever driven as regards a quality gear change, and knowing before you let the stick go that you're actually in the next gear. All straightforward from that point of view. I give you a better look at the little pins I was talking about. So you're looking for any flat edges around the edges of these here, just to make sure nothing's marked, because as they're running down in here, they're getting pulled and pushed all the time, and it is quite a small little pin, but they seem to do really well. They don't have any hassle, so they're good, but it does no harm to keep a good look at them. Obviously with the selector fork off now, you can move the dog rings in and out. You can see it sliding back and forward to engage your different gears. So that's as simple as that is. Obviously it takes a lot of money and time in the machining to get that all in the right place. So anyway, that's the look inside the sequential box. Hope it was of some use to you, and I hope you enjoyed it. Alright, see you soon guys.